Last week we were talking Stanley Cup, and this week, well, the mood in Montreal is a little bit different. Joined today by Gordon from the Globe and Mail and Arpon Basu from LNH.com. Now, let's start with what everyone's talking about. Can the Montreal Canadiens get through this series without Jesus Price, Carey Price?
The answer is no. Over to you, Arpon.
Well, and that's
Good
a fair answer. It is a fair answer. But I mean, the one thing I think that the Canadiens have shown, or they're actually going to need to show, because they did lean heavily on Carey Price in the second round against the Boston Bruins. They were outshot. They were probably outplayed for pockets of that series. But the thing that they did show is that they can actually play more of a puck possession game, more in the other team's end, over the course of that series against Boston. And now they're going to have to do that more than ever, because if there's any way you're going to beat Henrik Lundqvist, it's by having the puck be around his net constantly and hope he makes a mistake. The more it's in their end, the bigger chance they're going to have to give up goals. And if they give up 3 goals in a game, they're guaranteed to lose.
I think there's actually an interesting point here as well, which is that they have relied on their goaltending a lot this year, and Carey Price can be the X factor. I do think that, listen, for my money, when you look at how he's played in the playoffs and how he's played in the Olympics, elimination games, pressure situations, look, he is a playoff guy. He is a guy who rises to the occasion. He probably was an advantage that's now a minus. So now it's on the other guys, right? And I think that going forward is the interesting aspect of this team, which is, okay, goaltending is now a given.
Right.
Now the rest of you, please go out and do your jobs. And that when that happens, they're a very hard team to beat. Problem is, it doesn't happen every night.
I mean, you look at the last series they just had against Tampa, right? They lost their #1 starter, and you saw how it turned out for the Lightning. So they're getting a taste of their own medicine. Obviously, you're right, though. There is an argument that it's not so much. It doesn't always have to be on the goalie. It can be on the guys in front. But you see how important a first string tender is for a team.
It's like
right?
a quarterback in football. You're not going to ask many teams to go out and win a playoff game with their second string quarterback. So it's the same argument.
And he might not always win you a game, the goaltender, but he can sure lose you one in a hurry.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, you're talking about second string quarterback. Let's talk about our third string goaltender. Michel Therrien making a really gutsy call going with Dustin Tokarski instead of Peter Budaj, who's been our second string goalie and who we pay a lot of money to be that second string goalie. What do you think the decision was there?
Well, I personally think if you have a backup goalie, he's a backup goalie.
Yeah.
And that's his role, and he's really good at being a backup goalie. Every time he's been put in a position to be the starting goalie because of injury, he has not answered the bell because it's not his role. He's good in one-offs. You play this game, get us through this game, and then the #1 guy will be back. As soon as that security blanket or safety net is gone, he's shown a history of not being able to respond to that. So the guy that they chose has a very storied history, albeit not in the NHL, of being a guy who can respond to pressure situations. When you look big picture, yes, maybe Peter Budaj could win you a game, but can he win you a series? And can he win you a cup? Even looking even bigger picture, probably not. And can Tokarski? Maybe not, but maybe he can. There's a possibility that he can.
Arpon raises an interesting point. Budaj's role is to be the mop-up guy, right? He's a long reliever in baseball terms. The thing to me is, and long relievers generally aren't good enough to be closers.
They're journeyman pitchers.
Yeah, they're not good enough to be closers, and they're not good enough to be starters. The other thing is that he's a glue guy in the dressing room. Josh Georges called him the ultimate teammate, right? And that's important in the Habs universe. I would argue that maybe they assign a tiny bit too much importance to that sort of stuff. This being said, they signed Dustin Tokarski to a contract extension before the playoffs. They like this kid. And why not give it a shot? And yeah, Peter Budaj makes a bunch of money and he's due 1.4 next year. But next year's next year. You got to win now. And I think that Michel Therrien, which will be the final aspect of this that I would say is, he deserves credit. I've ripped him before in print and here. He deserves credit for the way that he's coached in these playoffs and for taking risks, because that's not how he usually rolls.
It's definitely a punch in the gut, I'm sure, to Peter Budaj. I mean, you got Michel Therrien saying, we're going with Dustin because he's a winner, right? He's a winner, and he has won at every level. It's his first playoff game was Game 2, right? And only really played 10 games or so with the Montreal Canadiens. So definitely some big shoes to fill there. Guys, thanks so much for being here. We'll see what happens with this series. Seems like the whole city's been punched in the gut right now. So we're hoping for some wins here. We'll see you guys next time.
All right, thank you.